Welcome to this new podcast by the Academy for Football Culture. For those who are just joining this series, my name is Marnix Beyen and I am a political historian. In that capacity, I co-teach a course on the history of the Balkans, and starting next year, I will teach another course on the history of sport and politics. The high-profile match being played tonight between Croatia and Portugal therefore interests me not only for sporting reasons. What particularly concerns me in this podcast is the fondness for the Croatian national men's football team within far-right circles in Flanders and elsewhere in Europe. On 17 December 2022, Croatia faced Morocco in the third-place playoff at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, after both teams had finished ahead of Belgium in the group stage. On that occasion, Filip Dewinter, the éminence grise and enfant terrible of the right wing of the far-right Flemish nationalist party Vlaams Belang, posted a photograph of himself on Facebook standing behind a large Croatian flag. The accompanying text read, and I quote, "An enthusiastic supporter of Croatia, Hrvatska, which will undoubtedly defeat Morocco. Croatia, a young European nation with an authentic football team made up of Croatian players without expensive imported footballers, is defending Europe's honor against African and Islamic Morocco." End of quote. For a historian like myself, who often uses discourse analysis as a method, two such sentences provide ample material for reflection. The opposition Dewinter constructs between the two teams is simultaneously an opposition between two semantic fields. On the one hand stands Croatia, described as young, European and authentic. On the other stands Morocco, portrayed as African, Islamic and implicitly inauthentic, consisting of expensive imported footballers. What is left unsaid is just as interesting as what is explicitly stated. In contrast to Morocco's Islamic character, Dewinter does not describe Croatia as Catholic or Christian. Likewise, in contrast to Croatia's youthfulness, he does not describe Morocco as old. The first omission probably reflects the fact that Dewinter is addressing not a Catholic audience, but a highly secularized right-wing nationalist one. The second silence is likely due to the fact that he is implicitly contrasting young Croatia not with old Morocco, but with old Western Europe, or indeed with the declining West, the Abendland whose downfall Oswald Spengler famously described in the early 20th century. The imported footballers to whom Dewinter refers may therefore point to diaspora players in the Moroccan national team, but they can equally be understood as referring to players with migrant backgrounds representing many Western European countries, such as Belgium, France and the Netherlands, or countries built on European settler colonialism, such as Australia, the United States and Canada. In Dewinter's view, these multi-ethnic national teams embody an old, inauthentic Europe, or more broadly, an old, inauthentic West. Another notable omission is any explicit reference to race or skin color. Dewinter does not speak of a white Croatia versus a brown Morocco. By 2022, he naturally understood that such overtly racial categories had become unacceptable in public discourse. Dewinter's admiration for Croatia long predates 2022. During the early 1990s, he claims to have traveled there 5 times in order to provide both moral and material support for the country's struggle for independence. His party, then still called Vlaams Blok, organized a Yugoslavia evening during which volunteers were also recruited to support the Croatian cause. In August 2013, when Croatia celebrated the 18th anniversary of the end of the successful War of Independence, Dewinter tweeted that he was a little jealous of that success. This was hardly surprising for a militant member of a party advocating Flemish independence. Yet he was not simply celebrating the struggle of a people who had courageously resisted the aggression of the Yugoslav People's Army and the greater Serbian project behind it. Several indications suggest that Dewinter also sympathized with the greater Croatian right-wing nationalist project which was revived during the same war and primarily sought to annex large parts of Bosnia. That same tweet, for example, included the slogan "Za dom spremni," for the homeland ready. Although this slogan was used during the Croatian War of Independence, it had also served during the Second World War as the official motto of the so-called independent state of Croatia, which was in reality a Nazi German puppet state led by the extremely violent fascist Ustasha movement. Besides present-day Croatia, this state also encompassed almost the entirety of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In 2014, Dewinter even handed out election posters while wearing the uniform of the Croatian Defense Forces, HOS, a far-right Croatian militia active during the early years of the 1990s war. Its symbolism explicitly referred to the Ustasha movement, and it likewise cherished the dream of a greater Croatia at Bosnia's expense. Even the acronym HOS was identical to that of the Ustasha armed forces during the final phase of the independent state of Croatia. Dewinter's support for Croatia therefore reflects not only sympathy for a people that won its independence during the 1990s, but also nostalgia for an openly fascist regime during the Second World War. He could hardly refer as explicitly to Flemish nationalist collaboration during that same period, let alone directly to German Nazism. Support for Croatia functioned instead as a dog whistle through which he could signal the same ideological ideal to his supporters in Flanders and presumably to the broader international far-right network of which he formed a part, although it should be added that the Facebook post of 2022 was in Dutch. At the same time, Dewinter's Facebook post fits into a much longer historical tradition. As early as 1519, Pope Leo X described Croatia as the antemurale Christianitatis, the bulwark of Christendom. By doing so, the Pope sought above all to emphasize the Croats' determination in resisting the advancing Ottoman armies. Over the centuries that followed, this image became deeply embedded in the collective imagination of Christian Europe. It now seemed as though the Croatian national football team was expected to fulfill a similar role against the perceived advance of Islamization, or what Dewinter today would more likely call the Great Replacement, a process of which the Moroccan team appeared to serve as a symbolic representation. The image of Croatia as the antemurale Christianitatis is not confined to Western Europe. It also shapes the national self-image of a significant section of Croatia's political elite. The question then is whether Croatian football, and the men's national team in particular, also contributes to sustaining this updated version of that self-image. Or is this merely a political fantasy entertained by Filip Dewinter and the European far right? It is certainly striking that the Croatian national team consists entirely of white players, despite the fact that the number of non-European migrants in the country has steadily increased. It also seems evident that football, or at least men's football, is one of the domains in which the right-wing nationalist tradition descending from the Ustasha remains strongly represented. This is true not only in Croatia itself, but also in Herzegovina, the southwestern region of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where Bosnian Croats constitute the majority of the population. Among the supporters of Zrinjski Mostar, for example, the Croatian club from the capital of Herzegovina, references to the Ustasha remain commonplace. During the 1990s war, the club moved into the stadium formerly occupied by the multi-ethnic and left-wing club Veleš Mostar. Before that relocation, the stadium had been used as a collection point where Bosniaks from the western part of the city were assembled before being transported to a nearby concentration camp. Veleš Mostar was forced to relocate to a village several kilometers outside Mostar, where it continues to play until today. This formed part of the ethnic cleansing of the western half of the city. The national team itself, several of whose players were born in Bosnia and Herzegovina, has made little effort to distance itself from this right-wing nationalist legacy or to align itself with the critical reassessment that has, in fact, gained considerable ground in contemporary Croatia. When the team returned from the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia with their silver medals, the players, including Luka Modric, allowed themselves to be enthusiastically celebrated by Marko Perkovic, the immensely popular singer who performs under the stage name Thompson. Perkovic fought during the Croatian War of Independence in the 1990s and is widely known for his sympathies towards the Ustasha regime. Perhaps his best-known song is Bojna Čavoglave, a tribute to the resistance put up by the inhabitants of the Dalmatian village of Čavoglave against the Yugoslav People's Army during the 1990s. I will now play the opening of that song. As you have just heard, the song opens with the Ustaša slogan mentioned earlier, Za dom spremni. It was precisely this song that several Croatian national team players were filmed singing as they flew home after the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, where they had defeated Morocco in the third place playoff, making the winter's prognosis come true. Earlier videos had also circulated showing players celebrating victories by singing another of Thompson's songs, Lijepa li si, How Beautiful You Are. At first sight, the song appears to be little more than a celebration of Croatia's natural beauty, yet it also praises Herceg-Bosna as the beautiful heart of Croatia. Herceg-Bosna, however, was a controversial Croat republic established in Herzegovina during the 1990s, from which a large proportion of the Bosnian Muslim population was expelled. The fact that Croatian players identified precisely this region as the beautiful heart of Croatia was experienced by many Bosnian Muslims as a direct provocation and as a denial of the suffering inflicted upon them during the wars of the 1990s. Unlike Filip Dewinter, they will most likely not be supporting Croatia tonight.
Universiteit Antwerpen. Bepaal mee de toekomst.